Right, a very good morning, everybody. Let me just check if we are live or not. Um, just give me a moment. Right, we are live. We are live. Just give me a moment. Right, so today I have a very exciting thing. We'll quickly try to cover about 50 questions today, right? And the idea essentially is that before we delve into all those questions, we'll quickly do them like a drill. Um so allow me to take you through the introduction of the Unacademy platform, the Unacademy portal. So Unacademy today is India's largest learning platform when it comes to preparing for any kind of competitive exam. This YouTube channel is particularly for management exams such as your CAT, GMAT, NMAT, SAT, and the likes. I am Prankur Arora. I am going to be your instructor on this journey of learning. Right. I've been a trainer, a coach for a better part of the last couple of years. I've even had the opportunity to consult with various organizations on different aspects of learning and development. Organizations such as uh, FMC Corp, PGCIL, Becton Dickinson India, um, Interglobe Air Transport, Marico Limited, ITC Limited, very many organizations, different aspects of learning and development that I essentially addressed. I'm also a published author, wrote this book called It's Not Funny, got published a couple of years back. The book is also a work of satirical fiction, right? So it garnered favorably positive reviews from satirists such as Papa CJ, Biswapati Sarkar, right? I hold advanced certifications in facilitation from an American organization called Leadership Management International as well. LMI is perhaps the world's largest organization working in the space of leadership, transformational leadership. And I co founded this startup by the name of Thought Sutra, right? So, Thought Sutra is an endeavor to better the ecosystem of creative arts in our country. So that's pretty much about me. Welcome aboard this journey of learning. I'll be essentially taking you through various aspects of verbal ability as well as reading comprehension. There are quite a lot of features that add to the pedagogy of an academy. Right? Some of those features include giving you access to daily live classes, such as this one, wherein all kinds of interaction between the educator and the learners, it happens in real time. You can engage in discussions, ask questions, clear your doubts, and even the question answers, they're conducted in the form of live polls on the platform. That's another adrenaline rush altogether. We conduct lots and lots of live tests and quizzes as well. The idea of these tests and quizzes is to help you develop a lot of perspective about your learning journey, about where you lie versus where you ought to be when it comes to your preparation, when it comes to your learning journey. All the courses on the platform are very much structured, very much in line with the exam syllabus to help you get the best of everything. And with one subscription to the platform, you get unlimited access to anything and everything. All kinds of live and recorded courses that you can access from the comfort of any of your devices. New batches, new courses, they'll keep on going live. And we've got hundreds and hundreds of educators, and all these educators, they've uh, they are highly accomplished people who over the years have successfully mentored many aspirants into top tier management institutions. You can start learning from all these educators for free before deciding whether you want to invest and avail the benefits of subscription or not. As I mentioned, everything will happen in real time. Language is never a barrier either, because we've got educators that teach in vernacular languages as well. If you're not as comfortable in English, I'm pretty sure you can find somebody who will be teaching in a regional language that you can, that you were brought upon and that you can basically avail the benefits of. Right? A really cool thing is that um, you'll see I'll be scribbling a lot of stuff on the class notes throughout the lesson. So all these class notes, they're made available to you once you subscribe to the platform. Talking of subscription, these are the various subscription models that Unacademy follows. You can clearly see that as the time period of the subscription goes up, the cost of subscription per month goes down dramatically, right? And if you use my name Prankur, you'll get an extra 10% off on any of the subscriptions that you're going to go for, right? And see, understand that if you're preparing for next year, if you're preparing for 2021, I would highly recommend at least a 6 month or a 12-month subscription period so that you give yourself the opportunity of time to get comfortable with everything, right? Having said all that, let's begin with the drill for the day. The first question is this is a sentence elimination question. So, out of these four, one is going to be the odd one out, right? Three would form a cogent paragraph, and one would be the odd one out. Right. Let's look at all the sentences. Automotive interests have consciously shaped a vision of the streets as places where cars belong. Indeed, the 21st century's apex predator is the automobile. A fatal collision is an everyday phenomenon, the kind of death it seems that is always expected. And finally, cars prowl the streets, growling in revving ravenness. Right. So, guys, a very important thing to understand here is that we're talking about cars and streets in general. Automotive interests have consciously shaped a vision of the streets as places where cars belong. So, sentence A is talking about how streets and roads are the places where cars belong, right? Obviously, you drive cars on roads, on streets. So, but what they're saying is that the interests I've consciously shaped a vision. So the idea was that it is a kind of a sanctimonious thing that I would say that, what, there's a street, the cars, they belong on the streets, right? And that is how they shaped the vision of automotive interest. But when you look at sentence B, it says 21st century's apex predator is the automobile. What is the apex predator? Apex predator is essentially a phrase that is used for the organisms that sit on the top of the food chain. So what they're saying is that automobile is the apex predator, right? So there's quite a lot of negative connotation here. And when you look at sentence C, that also talks about, a fatal collision is an everyday phenomenon, the kind of death it seems that is always expected. So a collision of cars is what they're saying. Death by cars, death by accident is what sentence C is talking about. And then you have sentence D, which says cars prowl the streets, growling and revving ravenness. So this is also kind of in sync with the idea of the apex predator that sentence B expressed, right? Prowl the streets means, move around on the streets in a stealthy manner, trying to look for the next prey, right? Growling and revving ravenness, right? So the idea is this is also kind of a metaphor that they're painting a very vivid imagery of the apex predator. So BDC are kind of talking about, they fall under the same theme of the car acting as the predator, causing death and destruction, right? And sentence A in that context becomes the odd one out because it is not sitting well with either of the three other sentences, right? The three others, again, they're talking about the automobiles that caused death and destruction. A is talking about the vision of the streets as places where cars belong. So, not really sitting well with the theme, and that is why A is the odd one out. Let's look at the next question. Another sentence elimination question. The imaginary worlds of fiction serve as means to escape the ties and the ennui of the real world and indulge vicariously in an alternate reality. Reading fiction trains people in this domain. In what domain are we talking about? Just as reading non-fiction books about, say, genetics or history builds expertise in those subject areas. Okay? The defining characteristics of fiction is not that it is made up, but that it is about human or human-like beings and their intentions and interactions. The solitary act of holding up with a book is actually an exercise in human interaction. Right. So when we look at all these sentences, sentence A is kind of talking about how fiction is a means of escape, right? You indulge in an alternate reality, right? Whereas when you look at sentence B, reading fiction trains people in this domain. What domain are we talking about? Perhaps the domain of human interaction that sentence D refers to, right? And then when you look at sentence C, it talks about defining characteristic of fiction is not that it is made up, but that it is about human or human like beings and their intentions and their interactions, right? So B, C, D kind of go together in the idea of fiction, reading fiction or reading non-fiction, helping us develop our skill of human interaction, right? And then they're talking about how in sentence C, we're talking about how even when it comes to fiction, you're reading about other humans and human like things, right? So the idea of your bettering your ability to grasp different aspects of human interaction is something B, C, and D together are talking about, whereas A is talking about how fiction or reading is an escape mechanism, right? So in that context, A becomes the odd one out in this case. Yes, let's move on to the next question now. So this is a sentence. You have to spot the error, right? Mm, right. Let's look at it. Not only has the commerce ministry fixed extraordinarily high prices for onion exports, but also made licenses mandatory for every consignment. So this sentence is essentially testing us on the correlative, which is not only X, but but also Y. Not only X, but also Y. Not only X, but also Y. Right? So when you look at all of this, the idea is that X and Y, they've got to be parallel, not only and but also they have to kind of be uniform in their construction. So these phrases have to be uniform when it comes to the construction, right? So sentence A says not only has the commerce ministry fixed, so the X part is not parallel with the Y part, but also के बाद सीधा we have a past tense verb, a verb in past tense. So when you try to marry that together, a better way to kind of write sentence A would be the commerce ministry has not only fixed, right? So after this, when you look at the correlative, not only fixed but also made, right? Not only fixed but also made is kind of making more sense because now the verbs are uniform in construction. So the error is in sentence A. The commerce ministry has not only fixed extraordinarily high prices for onion exports but also made licenses mandatory for every consignment. Let's look at the next one. Okay, this is a very easy subject verb agreement question, right? This is SV agreement. This questions force us to face the unpleasant truth that the policies of social justice have reached a dead end. This question forces us, or the questions force us to face the unpleasant truth that the policies of social justice. This question forces us to face the unpleasant truth that the policies of social justice have reached a dead end. So this is the one with the error. Move on to the next one. This is a sentence correction question. So this is a question pertaining to tenses. I'll give you another 30 seconds and then we'll discuss it. Right. The company announced that its profits declined. This is simple past, right? Declined much less in the second quarter than analysts had expected. What declined? Profits. Profits is, wait, I'll use another color. Profits is plural, right? Than analysts had expected. This, it refers to profits. This is singular, profits is plural, so this is incorrect. Had expected it to, and see, the company announced two things. This is the one. Ki profits decline much less. The second announcement is that the business will improve in the second half of the year. So, and that, right? And that its business will improve in the second part, right? This, that is missing. This is the first part is profits declining. What is the second part? Second part is business will improve in the second part of the second half of the year. So there are the announcement was twofold, right? Also, the idea is that the company announced that its profits declined much less in the second quarter than analysts had. So the expectation came first. So again, there are two things that happened in the past, and one action preceded another action, right? The first action was expectation, that they expected something. The second aspect was the announcement that the profits declined. So expectations came first, decline in the profits came second. So expectation would be in the past perfect form because there are two actions that happened in the past. One action preceded another. So the first action will take the past perfect form and the second action will take the simple past form. So we can clearly eliminate options C and D altogether, right? And Option A, we'll eliminate. Why? Because this it. Analysts had expected it. It is singular, right? And profits is plural, right? So this had to be them. This has to be them, right? So we eliminate option A as well. The only option that looks viable, the only option that seems doable is option B, had expected, and that its business, this its refers to the company, and that its business would improve in the second half of the year, right? Hope you've understood this. Let's move on to the next question. This is an inference question now. Another 30 seconds, you guys, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, let's read this out now. Health professionals have argued that too much butter in a person's diet can cause the dangerous overdevelopment in the bloodstream of high density lipoproteins that can clog arteries and put that person at risk of a heart attack. Cool. In South Korea, however, where per capita butter consumption is always non existent, the incidence of heart attacks is no less than that in countries where butter is commonly served with every meal. Which of the following statements represents the most reliable conclusion that can be drawn from the information above? Right. So, what is the premise? Very important to zero in on the premise. The situation in the paragraph, the passage, is that we are talking about how health professionals or doctors for that matter, they think that butter, too much butter causes heart attack, right? uh, then they are saying that in South Korea people don't consume butter, people don't eat butter, it is always almost non-existent. Still, the incidence of heart attacks, they are equal to countries where butter is very very common, right? So we have to basically draw an inference from this paragraph. Now let's follow the process of elimination, right? Option A: most people, if told of the potential risk of butter consumption, would willingly switch to margarine or some other butter substitute. Again, the idea is this is a very emotional answer option. Can we draw this inference from the paragraph? Can we draw this inference from the passage? We are saying most people would willingly switch to margarine or some other butter substitute. Uh, Again, the idea is, do people really do that, right? This is a very positive expectation we are carrying. For example, somebody tells me, you know what, I'm going to develop six pack abs, and then tomorrow they are eating a pizza. Do we expect them to completely switch to boiled vegetables from the next day? No, we don't, right? So this is, a very emotional, a very heartstrings answer option, but it is not logical or rational at all. Plus, it is not telling us anything about why in South Korea heart attacks are still on the rise when they don't consume butter at all. Option B. Despite arguments to the contrary, butter does not have a deleterious effect on the human heart. Again, this is going against the very first sentence of the paragraph, which says health professionals have argued that too much butter causes dangerous overdevelopment that cause the risk of heart attack. Right? So it is going against what the question itself is expressing. So we'll eliminate option B as well. Option C. Koreans avoid butter because they dislike the taste, not because of the health risk. uh, there is no information in the paragraph to help me conclude about this. There's no information that tells me that Koreans avoid butter because of the taste. Again, does not really tell me anything about heart attacks either, so I'll eliminate option C as well. Option D, butter consumption is probably not the only factor that can be linked to the incidence of heart attacks. Um, okay. Butter consumption is probably not the only factor that can be linked to incidence of heart attacks. This kind of might explain why Koreans continue to have, you know, a high incidence of heart attacks, a high rate of heart attacks, even when they don't consume butter. There's probably something else in their diet that is causing it, some other ingredient that is also linked to heart attacks. So I'll put this on the back burner and see if I have a better option in E. Other dairy products such as cheese and yogurt are equal threat. We are not concerned about other dairy products. The paragraph itself is only about butter consumption. So the most viable answer option is option D, which tells me that, you know what, there could be something else in the diet of the Koreans that is causing heart attacks, right? An assumption question now. Hi Priyanka, welcome to the class. Solve this question, this assumption question. Priyank, sorry, I said Priyanka, sorry. Hi Priyank, welcome to the class. Let me know which option you think is the best answer option out of the five. The third option. All right, let's look at it. What is the paragraph telling us? The World Trade Organization. Yeah, hi. Sorry, I think I lost connection there for a minute. The electricity got disconnected, and yeah. So you were saying the third option. Let's quickly look at it. The World Trade Organization has stepped up its scrutiny of the offshore production facilities owned by the world's top producer of athletic footwear. All right. A recent labor probe in country P found that each of the company's production plants violated several labor laws. So we are talking about country P here, right? And they are saying that when WTO found that they violated a lot of labor laws, they forced the company to double the minimum wage of each of its workers within that country. Therefore, the company's cost of producing athletic footwear will rise, right? So what they are saying is that because your minimum wage has been increased, so the cost of production is going up. Therefore, uh, that's the conclusion, that we are increasing the minimum wage, so the cost of production is going up. Now we have to look for a valid assumption between the premise and the conclusion here, right? Option A says the company has never been forced to raise the minimum wage of its workers in the past. Are we concerned? Is the passage saying anything about the past? The passage is not saying anything about the past. We are not concerned about what happened in the past. We are concerned about what is happening right now. So we'll eliminate option A. Option B, sales of the company's footwear in country P will rise. Is there anything in the passage that tells us or that hints at the fact that the sales are going to rise? Uh, we know for a fact WTO raised minimum wage, and then they are concluding that because the minimum wage went up, it was doubled for every worker. Therefore, cost of production is going up. There's nothing about sales, so I'll eliminate option two, option B as well. The third option, footwear that is produced in country P is superior to that produced in any other country. Uh, is there any information about what is going on in other countries? There is no information about what is going on in other countries, so I'll eliminate option 3 as well. Are you getting my point, Priyank? There is no information about any other country. Option D, the company will continue to produce its athletic footwear in country P. Now, this seems to be a very valid option, right? This seems to be a very valid option, and I'll tell you why. They are saying that this company was violating a lot of labor laws, and then they say that WTO doubled the minimum wage for every worker. What if this company goes that, you know what, you're unnecessarily increasing my costs, so I'll go to some other country which is very relaxed about its labor laws, where I can continue to violate the labor laws, and I'll set up my factories there. How can we be so sure that this company will continue producing this footwear in country P itself, if country P is you know becoming so hostile, right? Country P has raised the minimum wage for every worker for this particular company. So what if this company ups and leaves and goes to some other country where they will not face a lot of intrusion, right? So that is why D in that context becomes the most viable option. E says company's public display of compassion will ultimately translate. We are not concerned about image here at all. There is no mention in the passage about brand value or image, so we'll chuck that and let's move on to the next question. This is a parajumbles question now, right? So you have to figure out the perfect order for these sentences. Option 4, E, B, D, C, A. So you say we begin with E. While it was generally known that the Earth was not a sphere but an oblate spheroid, more curved at the equator and flatter at the poles, the question of how much more was yet to be established, one of the unsettled scientific questions. Um, Priyank, I would rather have BE be the order instead of EB, right? Why? Because B says one of the unsettled questions was the exact nature of the shape of the earth, and then E is answering that question, right? One of the unsettled question was the exact nature of the earth. Is kind of trying to answer it by saying that while it was generally known that the earth was not a sphere but an oblate spheroid, more curved at the equator and flatter at the poles, the question of how much more was yet to be established. So E is kind of trying to answer the unsettled scientific question about the nature of the shape of the earth, right? So BE in that context becomes a, a mandatory pair instead of EB, right? And after E, when you say how much more was yet to be established, the how much more answer is coming in sentence D, which says one way of doing that is to determine the length of the arc along a chosen longitude or meridian at 1 degree latitude separation. So after E, we will have D, and then we'll have C, which says the length of 1 degree arc would be less near the equatorial latitudes than at the poles. And then we conclude with A. This fact. What fact are we talking about? The fact that the length of 1 degree arc would be less near the equatorial latitudes than at the poles. This fact was established in the 1730s by French survey expeditions to Ecuador near the equator and the Lapland in the Arctic, which found that around the middle of the earth was about a kilometer shorter. So BEDCA in that context becomes the best arrangement of these sentences. Let's move on to the next question. Here you have to logically complete the argument. Come on, Priyank. Option D. D seems to be like the correct answer. Well done. Uh, why? Because the premise of this passage is that people who live in rainforest communities, because they eat a very vegetarian diet, they eat very little salt, and very few people suffer from high blood pressure, and their blood pressure does not even increase with age. But when these people move to cities and adopt high salt diets, uh, their blood pressure goes up, right? Still, they are saying that this does not necessarily mean that salt causes high blood pressure, because there are changes in other aspects of diet when such people move to city. Yes, could be something else, right? In their diet could be some other ingredient which is causing high BP and not salt, right? So D in that context becomes the best answer. Well done. Let's move on to the next question. So out of these four, one sentence is grammatically correct. You have to tell me which sentence is grammatically correct. Choose the correct sentence. I'll give you a hint. These are comparison sentences, right? You're making a comparison. And whenever you make a comparison, whenever you draw a comparison between two things, those two things have to be uniform in construction, right? They have to be the same things. You can compare apples with apples, you cannot compare apples with oranges. A. Unlike auto insurance, the frequency of claims does not affect the premiums for personal property coverage, but if the insurance company is able to prove excessive loss due to owner negligence, it may decline to renew the policy. Now, what are you comparing here? You are saying, unlike auto insurance, frequency of claims. So you are comparing auto insurance with frequency of claims, which does not make sense, Priyank. Compare auto insurance with some other form of insurance, or compare frequency of one claim with frequency of another claim. You cannot compare frequency with insurance. All right. Similarly, in B, unlike with auto insurance, frequency of claims, again, you are comparing what happens with auto insurance to frequency of claims, which again does not make sense. Unlike the frequency of claims, the premiums. Now you are comparing premiums with frequency. Again, does not make sense. The only correct answer option is option D, wherein you are comparing premiums for auto insurance to premiums for personal property. So you are comparing two types of premiums here, right? So that is why the comparison is complete. The comparison is correct. It is logically coherent. You are comparing one kind of premium with another kind of premium, right? So the dimension, remember, when it comes to, yeah, when it comes to a lot of, uh, if you are a science student, you would know that when it comes to physics, we would always have dimensions, right? Every unit has a dimension, right? So you could solve those questions only when the dimension was the same. Similarly, here you can only draw a comparison when you are comparing the two similar things, right? So premiums with premiums. Now this is a flaw question. Which of the following, if true, most strongly indicates that the logic of the prediction above is flawed? So you have to figure out the flaw in this question. See, okay, let's look at the passage. According to a prediction of the not so distant future published in 1940, electricity would revolutionize agriculture. This is the premise. Electrodes would be inserted into the soil, and current between them would kill bugs of weeds and make crop plants stronger. Right. So, what is the premise? That we'll use electricity to revolutionize agriculture, and that we'll use electrodes and insert them into the soil, and electrodes would kill bugs and weeds and make crop plants stronger. Right. That is the premise. Let's follow the process of elimination. Option A. In order for farmers to avoid electric shock while working in the fields, the current could be turned off at such times without diminishing the intended effects. Right. What do we have to do? We have to figure out which of these options, if true, would indicate a flaw in the logic. Now, the option A says farmers can avoid electric shock by turning off currents when they are working in the fields. Is that a flaw in the logic? Does not necessarily tell us how electrodes would be beneficial when they are killing weeds and bugs and making crop plants stronger. We are not really concerned about how farmers utilize it in to avoid electric shocks. So I'll eliminate option A. Option B says in if the proposed plan for using electricity were put into practice, farmers would save on chemicals now being added to the soil. Again, instead of figuring out logic, this is kind of strengthening the case of the argument, right? This is telling us another benefit of this activity, right? So it is not really pointing out any flaw. Option C. It cannot be taken for granted that the use of electricity is always beneficial. See, this is a very general statement. This is not really pointing out any flaw in the premise or the situation that is given to me. Rather, look at option D. Since weeds are plants, electricity would affect weeds in the same way as it would affect crop plants. Exactly, right? We are saying when we insert electrodes into the soil, they would kill bugs and weeds and make crop plants stronger. Weeds and crop plants are both plants. How can electricity kill one kind of plant and strengthen the other kind of plant? Either electricity will kill both plants or electricity will be beneficial to both plants. How can electricity discriminate between different kinds of plants is basically the flaw in this situation, the flaw in this passage. So, in that context, D is the biggest flaw in the prediction that is given to us here, because electricity cannot kill weeds and strengthen crop plants at the same time. Either it strengthens both the plants or it kills both the plants, right? Because electricity is a non-living thing. How will it figure out what is a weed and what is a crop, right? So E is also incorrect because a planting machine would need to avoid coming into contact. New parts for planting machines would need to be designed. Again, this is not really telling me anything about the flaw in this argument. Let's look at so out of these four, again, out of these four, three make a cogent paragraph. This is a sentence elimination question. You basically have to figure the odd one out. You have to figure the odd one out. So out of the four, three form a very cogent paragraph, but one doesn't. Is it typing error? All that. Option B, pre-human bipeds predated stone tools which appeared approximately 2.5 million years ago. Exactly. B is the odd one out. The other three are threaded together under a common theme. B is talking about a different idea altogether. Wait, this might not be visible properly. Let me rectify this. Should be visible now. Cool. D. Trust Law, a new service run by Reuters, has ranked India. D is the correct answer. All other three are talking about, incremental change when it comes to the empowerment that women have in our society. D is talking about a negative aspect, and the other three are talking about incremental change, positive change. So D is the odd one out. Yes, about this one. Again, there might be a visibility issue. Just give me a moment. A. A is the correct answer for no apparent reason. The other three are talking about how, we something gets stuck in our head, and if there was nothing unique about them, they would be swarmed by all the other memories that sound similar too. For no apparent reason, you cannot help yourself from humming or singing a tune by Lady Gaga or Cold. So, just give me a moment. Yeah, A is the correct answer because the other three are kind of following the same idea, right? Songs that get stuck in your head and go round and round, sometimes for days, sometimes for months. Some people call them earworms. If there was nothing unique about them, they would be swamped by all the other memories that sound similar to. Yeah. This is a parajumbles question. Are the options visible, Priyank, or do I change the color of the options? Cool. B, C, D, A. Alright, let's look at it. The family of duck-billed dinosaurs known as Parasaurolophus had been at the center of the paleoacoustic conversation. They are herbivorous creatures. Yes, after this, they refers to duck-billed dinosaurs. They are herbivorous creatures named for the shape of their mouth. Alright. So, instead of BCDA, I would have BCAD, right? When you look at D, it says Parasaurolophus is a rarity in this regard. In what regard? In what regard? As no other animal has been known to dedicate so much hard fossil friendly tissue to making noise. In what regard? The regard that sentence A is referring to. Interestingly, most creatures, including humans, vocalize using softer organs and membranes that tend to decompose instead of entering into fossil record. Parasaurolophus is a rarity in this regard. What regard? The idea of giving your tissue, the idea of giving your tissue your vocal organs to decompose instead of turning them into fossils, because then you say Parasaurolophus is a rarity in this regard because they dedicate tissue to fossils instead of having the tissues decompose. So BCAD in that context becomes a better arrangement than BCDA, because when you look at D, there has to be a callback, there has to be a reference. What regard are we referring to? The regard that sentence A refers to. A sentence elimination question now. A. Alright. Let's look at it. Cognitive science, however, tells us that students need to develop these different ways of thinking by means of extended focused mental effort. B tells us no matter what happens in the relatively brief period students spend in the classroom, there is not enough time to develop the long term memory structures required for subject mastery. Okay. C. A traditional science instructor concentrates on teaching factual knowledge with the implicit assumption that expert like ways of thinking about the subject. See, understand, A and C are both talking about ways of thinking, right? So there's a link there. When you look at sentence D, it says to ensure that the necessary extended effort is made, teachers need to engage students in thinking deeply about the subject at an appropriate level, monitor that thinking, and guide it to be more expert like, right? So look at this, to ensure that the necessary extended effort is made. Both A and D are also talking about the extended effort by means of extended focused effort, right? So A and C are linked because they are talking about ways of thinking. A and D are also linked because they are talking about extended effort. B is the odd one out because it is talking about mental structures, memory structures that no other sentence is referring to. So B is the answer. This is a tenses question. Pick out the correct tense. Yep, fourth is the correct answer. Nobody had seen him for 10 years when he suddenly started commentating in the cricket matches. Parajumbles. CDBA. C says South Pole has the harshest environment on Earth but also the most benign, says William Holzapfel, a University of California at Berkeley astrophysicist, the on-site lead researcher. Astronomers both are talking about the word benign, about the South Pole environment being benign, right? So C and D are a link. Yep. After this, you say B. During the atmosphere is thin, stable, and the pole has some of the common. See, I would rather go with CDAB, Priyank. Why? Because A says during the 24-hour darkness of the austral autumn and winter, the South Pole telescope operates non-stop under impeccable conditions, right? And these impeccable conditions are described in B. Why? The atmosphere is thin, that is number one. Second is that the atmosphere is stable. Third is that the pole has some of the calmest winds on earth, blowing away almost away from always from the same direction. So these conditions are what sentence A is talking about, right? A says that there are non-stop under impeccable conditions, right? Telescope operates non-stop under impeccable conditions. These impeccable conditions are described in sentence B. That is why I would rather have CDAB as the order or the arrangement of these sentences over CDBA. Alright, I hope that makes sense. Let's look at the next question. What to do in this question? This is a sentence correction question. So you have to basically pick out the option that is a better way of expressing the underlined portion, right? You have to grammatically correct it. Option 2. All right, let's look at whether that is right. So, according to the latest issue of Forbes magazine, the publicity campaigns that were conducted by the tourism departments of Mauritius and Cycles established these countries as the most popular beach holiday destinations of the year, right? So, understand here, Priyank, that the year is still going on, right? So, these remain the most popular beach holiday destinations throughout the year, right? So when you look at option 2, it says that were conducted, had established. So this is simple past tense and this is past perfect tense. This means both the actions, they started in the past and they ended in the past, right? But we need the present perfect form here because the action started in the past but it is still going on. The year has not ended yet, right? They will remain the holiday best holiday destinations throughout the year. So the for such actions that started in the past and that continue to the present, we take the present perfect form and not the simple past or the past perfect form, and that is why option 3 becomes the correct answer, because the publicity campaigns conducted by the tourism departments of Mauritius and Cycles, they have established, right? Have established is the present perfect form. This means tourism department established them and this establishment will go on throughout the year. They will remain the most popular holiday destinations. So the third option in that context becomes the best one. This is an analogy question now. Aircraft jet is the correct analogy. D. So secret, clandestine, covert and stealthy, they all mean the same thing, right? Secret and clandestine means the same thing. Covert and stealthy means the same thing. In fact, these are kind of related to the pair of secret and clandestine, and that is why B is a more appropriate analogous option. This one. B. Drama is to audience what game is to spectators. Yes. Building is to story what book is to chapters. Yep. B. Separation combination is the correct analogy. Let's begin with the comprehension now. Let me know if the comprehension is visible properly. This is the first paragraph. Okay, cool. This is not a question. This is the first paragraph. Let me know once you've read it. I'll move on to the next one. We are solving a comprehension now. If you're done reading this, I'll move on to the next paragraph. Okay, cool. I hope you're making notes as well of these paragraphs. You're noting down a very short summary, like in 2 to 3 words, what the paragraph is about, right? Because that will help you when you're solving the questions pertaining to the comprehension. You will know which paragraph was about what. You'd have formed a mental framework of the entire flow of the comprehension. Are you done, Priyank? Can I move on to the next one? This is a concluding paragraph. Let me know once you're done and we'll start with the questions. Sorry. Okay. Question number one. Primary purpose of the passage as a whole is to do what? So, primary purpose is basically a way to ask, why did the author write this comprehension? Primary purpose means, why did the author write the passage? That is the primary purpose. What do you think is the answer? Second or the fourth? So, describe a strange phenomenon. There is no strange phenomenon that the author was trying to describe. We'll eliminate A. Clarify a vague notion. What is the vague notion? Was there a vague notion in the in the passage? There was essentially no vague notion, and the idea was that there was no clarification that was going on. The author was trying to describe Lidloff's theory. That is what it was. 3. Condemn an ill informed opinion. No condemnation was happening. Eliminate option 3. Refute a grievous misconception. What is the misconception? And what was the author trying to refute? I will not go with option 4 either, rather, I will go with option 5, that the author was supporting an alternative theory. When you look at all the paragraphs, right? Jean Lidloff presents the controversial theory that Western methods of child rearing create the very problem these methods purport to eliminate. After this, every option. Hi Betu, welcome to the class. After this, every paragraph was about the same thing. Every paragraph was about supporting Lidloff's theory. Next question. According to the passage, Lidloff believes that adults whose sense of continuum is denied to them as children, what will happen? Fifth again. Alright, let's look at that. Priyank, what do you think? Priyank thinks the fifth as well. Let me take you back to the passage, right? Adults who've been deprived of their continuum needs as children often seek to stabilize themselves by engaging in self defeating or destructing behavior. This is how they stabilize themselves, which replicates the treatment to which they've become accustomed. Victims of emotionally barren parents may tend to seek mates who are domineering and cold, making true intimacy virtually impossible. Others may feel a lingering sense of guilt induced by a caregiver who never seemed to accept the child's existence. This guilt makes it difficult for an adult to feel peaceful or happy unless he is in crisis either physically or emotionally. Right? So, according to the passage, Lidlove believes that adults whose sense of continuum is denied are unable or unwilling to have no information about this. Develop a strong sense of discipline and familial hierarchy, the exact opposite. C. May suffer feelings of shame and inadequacy. Right? This was described as what? Guilt. Right? The passage said they will suffer from guilt. Right? So, C or option 3 in that context becomes the best option. Option 4 says seek mates whose strong sense of compassion can fill the void. The opposite. They seek emotionally unavailable mates. Option 5 are too self absorbed and domineering to become adequate caregivers for their own. See, there was no mention of how they treat their own children. So I will not speculate about it and go with option 5. I would rather go with option 3, which says may suffer feelings of shame and inadequacy. In the passage, they use the word guilt. Guilt and shame are the same things, they're synonyms, right? Next question. Which of the following best describes the function of the passage's fourth paragraph? Read these options. If you want me to take you back to the fourth paragraph, I'll do that. Fifth again. All right. Lidlov's critics argue that this form of attachment parenting does not enforce the natural hierarchy of parent over children in the family relationship. They stress that without a clear dominance of parent over child and discipline requiring the child to bend to the will of the parents, from the moment of birth, the child does not develop a sense of right versus wrong. Many of these critics espouse more scientific methods of See, what again, many of these critics espouse more scientific methods of raising children that rely on regularly scheduled feedings in infancy and careful control of child's environment as the child grows older. Lidloff's response. What does Lidloff do? Lidloff's response is that tight parental control uh, over the child undermines its natural impulses. Without choice, the child will not gain experience in making decisions and will be forced to look to an outside authority rather than use his own judgment, upsetting the balance of the continuum by co opting the child's natural ability to move toward dependence and decision making skills. She asserts ultimately results in a lack of maturity and self reliance in the adult. So, when you look at the fourth paragraph, we know critics gave some arguments and Lidloff responded to those arguments. This is what happens. This is what happened. Nothing more than that. So, when you look at fifth option, it suggests that Lidloff would be willing to modify. Does not suggest that at all. Critics said something and then Lidloff responded to those critics. She did not really accept anything, right? So we'll eliminate option 5. Option 4. It stresses the need for all parents to establish their familial authority over their children. Nope. It undermines the passage's overall conclusion. Again, no undermining was happening about the conclusion. It resolves the argument between the two parenting schools by calling for further testing and research. There was no call for further testing and research, right? There was no call for that, so I'll eliminate B as well. Option A is correct. It provides the reader the opportunity to see how both Lidloff and her critics rebut each other's opinions. That is pretty much it. That was the role that paragraph 4 played. Last question of the comprehension. According to the passage, which of the following qualifies as an adult behavior that describes the balance of the continuum? That disturbs. I'll take you back to the line 54. This is line 54, right? Yeri. Upsetting the balance of the continuum by co opting the child's natural ability to move toward independence and decision making skills, she asserts, ultimately results in a lack of maturity and self reliance in the adult. Look at the options now. Go on. What is your question? Uh, Priyank, are you appearing for CAT on Sunday? Are you preparing for CAT on Sunday or for next year? Do we follow what we think and observe or seek our elders to decide for us always? Uh, this Sunday, all right. I think you should trust your instincts. The elders, they might have they come from their own school of thought, right? The world has kind of changed now, so I think we should follow our own instincts. As adults, we should take that ownership of our lives, right? So elders always want the best for us, but in their point of view, what is best could differ from our point of view. And if we want to be adults, then we should take the ownership of our life. That is what I feel. Priyank, for Sunday, buddy, it depends on what your strength area is. If you think that you are more confident about solving comprehensions over, verbal ability, then you should begin with comprehension. If you think you're more strong or you're stronger when it comes to verbal ability, then you should begin with that. See, in any case, you will not be solving all comprehensions, right? I'm thinking you'll probably skip one comprehension, right? So verbal ability and RC in that context end up having the same kind of weightage. Okay, so if you think you're more confident about if you think you're more confident about RC, begin with RC. If you think you're more confident about verbal ability, begin with verbal ability. The idea being the first 10-15 minutes should be about gaining confidence in that particular section, right? And the confidence will come once you're solving questions correctly. So start with your strength area. Listening to all and deciding and doing by us. Yes, listening to everybody, showing them that you give them that respect. So you listen to them, listen to what they have to say, and then follow your instincts. That means listening to your own self as well. All right, coming back to the question, according to the passage, which of the following qualifies as an adult behavior that disturbs the balance of the continuum? Process of elimination again. Option A says prematurely encouraging interaction with other children who are slightly older. Prematurely encouraging interaction. We are basically disturbing the continuum. So you are curtailing their independence, is what the comprehension said. So we eliminate A. B. Imposing a strict sleeping regimen regardless of the child's expressed desire to sleep. Exactly. This is how you're curtailing their independence. So B seems to be the most viable option. C says resolving not to have children in order to stop the cycle of inadequate parenting. This is off topic. Uh, Punishing a child who deliberately disobeys an order. Again, all seem correct. Providing the child with his own room as soon as is financially possible. Instead of disturbing the continuum, you are encouraging the continuum here. Option B or option 2 seems correct to me. All are disturbing reasons. In the context of the paragraph, they might all be disturbing, but look at what the paragraph was saying, right? Upsetting the balance of the continuum by co-opting the child's natural ability to move towards independence. So how do you disturb the continuum if you're curtailing their independence? How are you curtailing their independence? By imposing a strict sleeping regimen regardless of the child's expressed desire to sleep. This is how you're curtailing their independence. You're lowering down their independence, their freedom. So B in that context becomes the most viable answer option. Which of the following indicates a flaw in the reasoning above? So this is a flaw question. Try to solve it. All happened with me and still some are going on. My goodness. I think that's the story of every conservative household in India. You're not alone there. I think all of us have been there. Come on, guys, this is quite easy. This one's an easy question. Figure it out. Okay, Priyank says B, and then you're saying it's E. Priyank, some 3-month-old child weighs as much as 17 pounds is not a flaw in the reasoning above, no? Some 3-month child weighing as much as 17 pounds is not. See, again, what is the premise here? What is the situation in the question? The premise is average normal infant born in United States weighs between 12 to 14 at the age of 3 months. Then they are concluding, therefore is a conclusion. Thus far we had premise, therefore से conclusion शुरू हो गई. Therefore, if a 3-month-old child weighs only 10 pounds, its weight gain has been below the United States average. Now you're talking about weight gain. Earlier you were talking about weight. So therefore, the flaw in the reasoning above is that average weight gain is not the same as average weight. The premise was about weight and the conclusion is about weight gain. So how can you conclude about weight gain when you're talking about weight, right? So B in that context is incorrect. Some 3-month-old child weighs as much as 17 pounds is out of scope. It is not really pertaining to the argument at hand at all. Okay? So E is the correct answer, that average weight gain is not the same as average weight. Alright? This is again a sentence correction question. You have to grammatically correct this. You have to pick the option which is grammatically the most appropriate. I'll give you a hint. This is a modifier. Spanning more than 50 years is a modifier. So this question basically tests you on the rule of modifiers. How to choose which option is correct? See, understand the rule. Again, understand the rule. Spanning more than 50 years. What is spanning more than 50 years, right? When it comes to the modifier, you want the noun or the noun phrase that this modifier is referring to come right after the comma, right? What is spanning more than 50 years? This guy's career, right? Friedrich Muller's career is spanning more than 50 years. So after comma, we should be talking about career. So we'll eliminate option A and option D right away. Why? Because they're talking about Mueller, but we have to refer to the career right after the comma, right? So the only three options that are left for us are options E, B, C, and B. Spanning more than 50 years, Mueller's career began in an uncompromising apprenticeship as a Sanskrit scholar and culminated in virtually every honor that European governments and learned societies could bestow. Spanning more than 50 years, the career of Mueller has begun nahi hoga. We are talking about past tense, right? This is present perfect. So we eliminate E. C. Mueller's career began with the uncompromising apprenticeship of being a Sanskrit scholar and culminated in virtually every honor that European governments and learned societies could bestow. So out of B and C, I would rather go with B over C. Why? Because look at B. Mueller's career began in an uncompromising apprenticeship as a Sanskrit scholar and culminated in virtually every honor. So these are parallel. These are more parallel. Your preposition is also parallel. Your tenses are parallel. Began and culminated are both simple past tense. Mueller's career began with the uncompromising apprenticeship of being a Sanskrit scholar is a little unnecessary in terms of construction, because being is, it is a really dicey word to go ahead with. It basically enforces a passive construction and the rest of the sentence is in an active construction. ठीक है, plus when you're talking about apprenticeship, you say the career began in apprenticeship. It did not begin with apprenticeship. ठीक है. So with this, I'll end today's class. It's been almost a couple of hours that we've been going at it, right? I'll end today's class now. Hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys learned a lot. All the best. If the both of you are appearing for your exam on Sunday, all the very best. Right? Don't fret about stuff that is left now. Don't don't try to learn new concepts. Don't try to practice new questions. Focus on your strengths, right? You guys would know what you do best, so focus on those strength areas. Don't fret over things that might be left. All right, all the very best. Chalo, see you. Stay strong and stay safe. Bye bye.